You forged my name, I said, laying the papers in the center of Mom's dining table. Brielle's face drained white. Mom whispered, Nora, you're tearing this family apart. I looked at her and said, No, Mom. This family started tearing when everyone decided my name was optional. 3 weeks earlier, that same table had looked harmless. My mother, Maggie Mason, had roasted a chicken the way she always did on Sundays. Too dry around the breast, too much rosemary on the skin, but served like it belonged in a magazine. There were mashed potatoes in a blue ceramic bowl, green bean casserole with canned fried onions, a store-bought pecan pie still in its plastic dome, and 2 bottles of Chardonnay sweating near the napkins. I was 36 years old, living alone in Brooklyn, and working as a compliance analyst for a financial firm near Wall Street. My job was simple to describe and exhausting to perform. I read what other people skipped. Signatures, dates, account numbers, disclosure language, missing initials, altered PDFs, timelines that leaned too hard on coincidence. At work, that made me useful. In my family, it made me difficult. My younger sister Brielle arrived 20 minutes late with Grant Sullivan, her boyfriend of nearly a year. She stepped into Mom's dining room wearing a cream sweater, soft curls, and the kind of smile that made people forgive her before knowing what she had done. Grant followed behind her carrying a bakery box from a place in Park Slope, polite enough to kiss Mom on the cheek and ask where he could put his coat. That was Grant. Solid, quiet, 41. A commercial construction project manager who remembered names, sent thank you texts, and looked people in the eye without making a performance out of it. Brielle lived for performance. She had always been the girl the room turned toward. When she laughed, Mom laughed louder. When she cried, everyone moved closer. When I was a kid, I learned to fold myself into the corners of our house because Brielle's feelings needed the hallway, the kitchen, the stairs, and every breath of available air. I did not hate my sister. That was the part nobody ever believed. We had just passed the rolls when Brielle stood up, cheeks pink, one hand covering the other. Grant rose beside her, nervous, but smiling. We're engaged, she said. Mom gasped like she had been waiting her whole life to hear those 2 words. Aunt Paula clapped both hands over her mouth. Someone knocked over a wine glass. Phones came out. Grant slipped his arm around Brielle's waist while she held out the ring, a neat oval diamond that caught every light in the room. I smiled because I meant it. That's wonderful, Brielle, I said. Congratulations, both of you. For one clean second, I thought maybe that would be enough. Then Mom leaned toward me, close enough that I smelled Chardonnay on her breath and rosemary on her sleeve. Don't make this about you, she whispered. I looked at her, waiting for the rest of the sentence. There wasn't any. I had not frowned. I had not sighed. I had not mentioned work, money, Grandma Ruth, or the old arguments nobody was supposed to admit still lived under the floorboards. I had said congratulations. Still, Mom had warned me like I was a storm cloud drifting over Brielle's perfect sky. Across the table, Brielle tilted her face for a photo, chin lifted, ring angled. Gret's smile held, but something in his eyes flickered when he glanced from Mom to me. I picked up my water glass with both hands so no one would see my fingers tighten. I know, I told Mom. And I did know. In our family, Brielle got celebrated. I got managed. On Wednesday morning, I was reviewing a vendor file when my phone buzzed beside my keyboard. Unknown number. I almost let it go. People who needed me usually emailed first. People who wanted something from me usually called my mother, then complained that I was hard to reach. The message was short. Hi, Nora. This is Grant Sullivan. I'm sorry to text out of nowhere. I got your number from your mom's phone when she asked me to send everyone the engagement photos. I found something that doesn't make sense. Would you be willing to talk? I read it twice without moving. In my line of work, nobody says something doesn't make sense because they have a vague feeling. They say it when the numbers are on the page and refuse to add up. Grant was careful. He did not write, Brielle lied. He did not write, your sister did something. He sounded like a man outside a burning room, unsure whether opening the door would save someone or make the house go up. Before I answered, I remembered Brielle's phone call from 22 days earlier. It had lasted 43 minutes. Brielle did not call me that long unless she needed a favor she did not want to name too early. She talked about bridesmaid dresses, a contractor who overcharged her, mom's blood pressure, and Grandma Ruth's apple cake recipe. Then, so smoothly I almost missed it, she asked, "Do you still keep all that estate paperwork from Grandma?" I had been rinsing a coffee mug in my sink. "What paperwork?" "You know, the lawyer letters, the court stuff, whatever came after she passed." I told her I kept the main probate packet in a file box, but not much else. Brielle laughed lightly. "Of course you do. You always keep receipts like the FBI is coming." At the time, I thought she was teasing me. Now I understood she had been checking the locks on a door she hoped I would never open. I typed back to Grant. "I can talk, but not over text. Coffee near Court Street at noon?" His reply came in less than a minute. "Thank you. I'll be there." I set the phone down and stared at the file in front of me. A missing W-9, a mismatched address, a signature dated before the document was generated. Small things until they weren't. Ruth Whitcomb lived up in the Hudson Valley, kept her own bank accounts, and could silence a room with one raised eyebrow. When I was 16, after Brielle had cried her way out of wrecking Mom's car, Grandma Ruth told me, "One day, you'll need a place where nobody can make you ask permission to belong." I had not known then that a sentence could wait 16 years to become evidence. At 11:52, I shut my laptop. I did not call Mom. I did not call Brielle. In my family, the first person to speak usually owned the story. For once, I wanted to hear it before Brielle taught everyone how to cry about it. Grant was already there when I walked in, seated by the window with both hands around a paper cup he had barely touched. His work jacket hung over the chair beside him, the logo of a construction firm stitched over the pocket. Dust marked one cuff, the kind that comes from job sites. He stood when he saw me. "Miss Mason," he said. "Nora is fine." That seemed to make him more nervous. He opened the leather folder in front of him, but did not push it toward me. "I don't want to put you in the middle of something," he said. I almost laughed. In my family, I had been in the middle for years. I was just told to stand there quietly. "What did you find?" Grant looked out the window, then back at me. "Last Friday, I helped Brielle move 2 storage bins out of a unit in Queens. She said it was old decorations, winter coats, stuff from your grandmother's house." "Grandma Ruth's things?" He nodded. "One bin slipped in the parking lot. The lid cracked open. Papers went everywhere. I was just helping pick them up." He removed a photocopy of a letterhead. "Russell Keene, attorney at law. Trusts, estates, fiduciary services." My stomach tightened. "I saw that name," Grant said. "Brielle snatched the paper so fast, I thought I had done something wrong. She said it was old estate stuff and changed the subject." "That alone bothered you?" "No," he swallowed. "That made me curious. This made me worried." He slid over a joint account application with a sticky note on one line. Initial deposit. Brielle had written a number in blue ink, crossed it out, then written a higher one.
Grant tapped the page. When we talked to a mortgage broker 9 months ago, she told me she had far less saved. About $64,800 less. I did not react right away. Numbers are more honest when you let them sit. And the land? I asked. His eyes sharpened. You already guessed there was land?
I guess there was a reason you brought county paperwork. He took out the deed record from Dutchess County. Brielle Mason, sole owner. A small parcel near Beacon, purchased 12 months earlier. Not Manhattan money, not a mansion, but enough land to prove a secret had been given an address. She never told me, Grant said. We discussed buying a house together. Prenup, mortgage, debt, everything. She never mentioned this. I studied the deed date, the title company, the transfer notes. Hudson Ridge Title Services appeared in the margin. Then Grant said the thing that made the room narrow around me. There was another page in the box. I only saw it for a second before she took it. But your name was on it. Nora Mason. My coffee sat untouched between us. I had gone there expecting Brielle's lie. I left understanding I might have been used to tell it. By the time I got back to my apartment, Brooklyn had gone gray with evening rain. I dropped my bag by the door and stood in the kitchen without turning on the light. My phone was on the counter. Brielle had not called. Mom had not called. That made it worse. Silence in my family was never empty. It was usually somebody choosing a side without admitting it. I filled the coffee maker, even though it was after 7. While it brewed, I pulled a yellow legal pad from the drawer and wrote the first date I knew for certain. Grandma Ruth died 19 months ago. Her name still did something to me. Ruth Whitcomb had been sharp, formal, impossible to flatter. She sent handwritten thank you notes and believed the checkbook told more truth than a mouth. Under her death date, I wrote, 15 months ago, supplemental granddaughter fund mentioned. Grant had only seen enough to scare him, but the phrase sat in my mind like a key under a mat. 12 months ago, Brielle buys land near Beacon. 9.5 months ago, Brielle tells Grant she has no significant inheritance. 22 days ago, Brielle calls me for 43 minutes and asks about estate paperwork. 3 days ago, engagement dinner. Today, Grant tells me my name was in the box. I stared at the list until the coffee hissed behind me. The timeline did not prove a crime, not yet, but it proved something uglier than confusion. Brielle had known about money before she bought the land. She had hidden the land before discussing a mortgage. She had asked me about documents before Grant found the box. Those were not random events bumping into each other in the dark. They were footsteps. I opened my old file box from the hall closet. Inside were tax returns, lease renewals, medical forms from when I helped Grandma Ruth after her hip surgery, and the probate packet Mom had given me after the funeral. Everything important is in there, Mom had said back then, pressing the folder into my hands while Brielle cried at the kitchen island. I had believed her. That was the humiliating part. Not that I had been trusting, that I had trusted the one person who had trained me not to expect protection. I searched every page. Surrogate's court filings, funeral invoices, a bank account summary. Nothing about a supplemental granddaughter fund. Nothing with Russell King's letterhead. Nothing that explained why my name had been in Brielle's storage bin. Near midnight, I found one of Grandma Ruth's old medical authorization forms. My signature sat at the bottom. Clean, familiar, available. For a long while, I just looked at it. Then I wrote one more line on the legal pad. What did they do with my name? The coffee had gone cold. Rain ticked against the window. My apartment was quiet, but the quiet belonged to me. Vivian Park answered on the second ring.
Nora Mason, she said. Start with the dates.
That was Vivian. No warm-up. I had worked with her on a beneficiary dispute, and she had a courtroom voice with eyes that missed nothing. I told her about Grandma Ruth, Russell Keene, the storage box, Grant's concern, Brielle Sutton money, and the land near Beacon. I did not say my sister stole from me. Vivian would have corrected me before the sentence finished. When I stopped talking, she said, "Do not text your sister. Do not call your mother. Do not ask the trustee for anything yourself." My mother will say I'm making it bigger than it is. She can say that at dinner. She cannot say it to a court. Vivian continued, "We don't accuse first. We preserve evidence first." By 10, she had my written authorization. By noon, she had requested the surrogate's court records tied to Ruth Whitcomb's estate and sent Russell Keene a formal demand for any informal accounting naming me. She also asked for correspondence logs, addresses, release forms, payment instructions, and proof of identity verification. The words steadied me. Specific words have weight. They keep people from hiding behind, "I thought somebody handled that." For 3 days, I went to work and pretended my hands were not shaking. I reviewed vendor files. I flagged a missing disclosure. I answered emails in complete sentences. At lunch, I sat in the stairwell because the break room television made every sound feel like pressure. Brielle posted a photo of her ring with the caption, "Found my forever." Mom commented first, "My baby girl deserves every beautiful thing." I put the phone face down. That sentence stayed with me. In Mom's language, deserving had always been a spotlight pointed at one daughter and a locked door placed in front of the other. On the 4th morning, Vivian called before 9. "I have the preliminary package," she said. I gripped my desk. "And there is a fund." The office kept moving around me. Printers hummed. Someone laughed like the world had not shifted under my chair. Vivian said, "Supplemental Granddaughter Fund, established 16 years ago by Ruth Whitcomb. Beneficiaries listed as Brielle Mason and Nora Mason." For a second, I did not recognize my own name. "Both of us?" "Equally," Vivian said. "Can you leave work?" I said yes before asking why. At her Midtown office, she placed a neat stack of copies in front of me. No drama, no gasp, just paper. That was what frightened me most. A lie looks ordinary until someone reads it carefully. The top page carried Grandma Ruth's full legal name. The second carried mine. For the first time since Sunday dinner, I stopped feeling like an overreaction. I started feeling documented. Vivian turned the first page towards me. "Read the beneficiary line," she said. I leaned over the conference table. The glass reflected the lights, my hands, and the black type in the center. Beneficiaries: Brielle Mason and Nora Mason, in equal shares. Equal. That word hit harder than a slap because it was so calm. Grandma Ruth had not written "if convenient." She had not written "unless Maggie thinks Nora needs it." She had not written "unless Brielle cries first." Equal shares. Vivian gave me time, but not pity. The trust was separate from the main estate, she said. After fees, the accounting shows approximately $198,400 available for distribution. I did the math before she finished. $99,200 each. Yes. My throat tightened. In New York, that was a down payment. A year of breathing room, a door that could close without my mother holding the key. Vivian slid another page forward. Brielle received her share 15 months ago. There it was, a wire transfer, her signature, and a receipt release and refunding agreement. Then Vivian placed the next document in front of me. This is where it becomes serious. My name was printed at the top, Nora Mason. Below it, a statement said I had reviewed the accounting, accepted the distribution, released Russell Keene from further fiduciary responsibility, and agreed to refund any overpayment if necessary. At the bottom sat my signature. For a second, my eyes recognized the shape before my mind rejected it. The long N. The loop in Mason. The slash I used when I was tired. It looked like me. It was not me. I didn't sign this, I said.
Vivian watched my face, not the paper. You're certain? I have never seen it before. She nodded once and added the final page. Payment direction letter. According to the letter, I had instructed Russell Keene to send my distribution to Hudson Ridge Title Services for a real estate transaction. My chair felt too small beneath me.
Brielle's land, I said. That is the working theory. I stared at the false signature until it stopped looking like handwriting and started looking like a burglar in my doorway wearing my coat. Vivian tapped the notary section. There is a mobile notary stamp from Calvin Price. The ID information is incomplete. If you were not present, somebody has a problem much larger than a family misunderstanding. I thought of Mom whispering at dinner, "Don't make this about you." All along, it had been about me, about keeping me absent, keeping my name useful while keeping my body out of the room. Vivian closed the folder. Nora, this may involve forged documents, improper distribution, and breach of fiduciary duty. We move carefully from here. I looked at the page one last time. My signature was there, I said. My consent was not. Russell Keene did not answer quickly. Men like him rarely do when a polite question becomes a legal problem. His first response came through his assistant, wrapped in careful phrases about reviewing archived materials and confirming internal procedures. Vivian read it once and smiled without warmth. "He's nervous," she said. "How can you tell?" He used 4 sentences to say he needed time. 2 days later, the first batch arrived. There were correspondence logs, scanned envelopes, email printouts, and a note from Russell's office dated 15 months earlier. The note said he had contacted Maggie Mason to confirm the current mailing address and email for both beneficiaries. Both beneficiaries. I read that line 3 times. Mom had known there were 2.
Vivian placed another page beside it. Your mother replied by phone. Russell's assistant summarized the call. The note was short.
Mrs. Mason states younger daughter Brielle Mason will assist with family communications. Older daughter Nora Mason dislikes legal paperwork and prefers not to be bothered unless necessary. I felt heat climb my neck. That sounded exactly like Mom and exactly like Brielle at the same time. One woman too tired to ask, the other too ready to answer. Then what? I asked. Vivian gave me the next page. Brielle had emailed Russell's office the following morning. She provided an address in Queens, the apartment I had left almost 6 years earlier, and an old email from a job I no longer had. Not almost right. Not outdated by accident. Dead. She knew better, I said. Vivian nodded. That matters. The file showed 2 notices mailed to Queens. No response. 1 email sent to the debt account. No reply. Then, 3 weeks later, Russell's office received a signed receipt, release, and refunding agreement with my name on it. Attached was a copy of an old driver's license. My old driver's license. The one I had scanned years ago for Grandma Ruth's medical paperwork after her hip surgery. I remembered giving Brielle access to that folder because Mom had been overwhelmed, and Brielle had promised to print the insurance forms. A promise. In my family, that was often just a door left unlocked. Vivian turned to the notary page. Calvin Price, she said, mobile notary. The stamp is real, but the acknowledgement is thin. No full ID number, no detailed journal reference, just your name and a date. Can he do that? He shouldn't. Not if he actually identified you properly. Russell's office had accepted the packet. Maybe because Brielle sounded helpful. Maybe because the family had given her authority she never legally had. Maybe because closing an old trust felt easier than asking one more question. Easy is where theft likes to hide. I thought of Mom at Sunday dinners, telling me not to be difficult, not to upset Brielle, not to make everything sound like an investigation. But Brielle had not needed to break into a bank. She only needed Mom to hand her the letter. My mother didn't steal the money, I said quietly. Vivian looked at me. She handed the thief my address. Vivian closed the folder with one clean motion. Then we make sure no one gets to call this confusion. Grant later told me he confronted Brielle in her Park Slope apartment while sunlight lay across the hardwood. Wedding magazines covered the coffee table. A seating chart sat beside a vanilla candle. Her oval diamond flashed every time she moved. Grant stood near the kitchen island and said, "We need clarity." Brielle laughed, not because anything was funny, because laughter bought her time. About what? The land near Beacon, the money, the trust documents. He said she went still at the word trust, not shocked, calculating. The kind of stillness people use while choosing anger or tears. Then she chose tears. Grandma Ruth wanted me to have something, she said. Nora always had everything together. I was the one who needed help. Grant did not reach for her. You told me you had no significant inheritance when we met with the mortgage broker. I was embarrassed. You let me prepare to open a joint account with you. I wanted us to start our life. You bought land 12 months ago and never told me. Her face hardened. You're making it sound dirty. Grant asked the question that cut through all of it. Did Nora know about the fund? Brielle looked away. That was answer enough. By 6, Mom called me. I was in Trader Joe's, near the Lemons, trying to remember why I had come. Nora, she said, already disappointed, what are you doing to your sister? No hello, no question about documents, no concern that my name sat on papers I had never signed. What did Brielle tell you? She's devastated. She says you hired a lawyer and dragged Grant into an ugly misunderstanding. It isn't a misunderstanding. Mom lowered her voice, the way she did when she wanted me ashamed. This could have been handled privately. I set the lemons back. It was private for 15 months, Mom. That was the problem. For once, she had no answer. If you're listening to Nora's story, leave a like and tell us in the comments what advice you would give her. Should she expose every document, protect her peace, or give her mother one last chance to tell the truth? Mom breathed into the phone like I had slapped her. Brielle is fragile, she said. No, Brielle is cornered. There's a difference. She is your sister. And I was her sister when my name was signed. A woman beside me pretended to study avocados. Mom softened. Soft was always more dangerous than anger. Honey, families don't survive when everyone starts treating each other like criminals. Families don't survive because one daughter is asked to absorb the damage quietly. You sound so cold. There it was, the old label. Cold is not the same as finished, Mom. She whispered my name like a locked door refusing to open. I hung up before she could ask me to forgive Brielle for what Brielle had not yet admitted. By Friday morning, Brielle's version had traveled faster than any legal notice. Cousin Melissa texted me with too many question marks. Uncle Ray left a voicemail saying weddings were stressful and sisters should not bring attorneys into blood. Under Brielle's ring photo, someone wrote, "Stay strong, sweet girl." Sweet girl. That was how Brielle survived. She stood beside the fire with wet eyes and convinced everyone she had been burned first. Aunt Paula did not call me that morning. She did not comfort Brielle either, which in our family was almost an act of rebellion. Paula Mercer was my mother's younger sister, widowed, practical, and harder to fool than people guessed. She lived in Yonkers with storage bins in the garage and birthdays in blue ink on the calendar. Later, she told me she had been folding towels when Brielle's message came through. Nora is trying to humiliate me before the wedding. I don't know why she hates seeing me happy. Paula read it twice, then sat on the edge of the bed. Because she remembered Grandma Ruth after one Sunday dinner, watching me rinse plates while Brielle cried over something nobody could name. "That child sees everything," Ruth had said. And because she doesn't cry on command, this family thinks she doesn't hurt. Paula went to the garage. She pulled down the bin marked Ruth, cards, photos, miscellaneous. Inside were Christmas cards tied with ribbon, old church bulletins, and letters in envelopes so neat they looked ironed. At the bottom was an envelope addressed to Paula. The postmark was from 19 months ago, 2 weeks before Ruth died. Paula opened it with shaking hands. Ruth's handwriting leaned slightly to the right. "Paula, if anything happens before I can explain everything properly, remember this. The supplemental granddaughter fund is for both girls. Brielle must learn she can stand without applause. Nora must know she has a place that does not require permission. The letter would not replace a court record. It would not prove who forged a signature. It would not show a wire transfer or expose a careless notary. But it did something courthouse paper could not do. It proved Grandma Ruth had seen me." At 7:18 that evening, Paula called. "Nora," she said, her voice older than it had sounded at Christmas. "Can you come by?" I drove to Yonkers after work. The roads were slick from rain. When Paula opened the door, she did not hug me. She just held out the letter like it was too heavy for one person. I read it standing in her kitchen, beside a cooling mug of tea and untouched saltines. By the time I reached my name, my eyes blurred. Not because of the money, because my grandmother had known the exact shape of the cage. Paula touched my arm. "I'm sorry I didn't look sooner." I folded the letter along its old crease. "For once," I said, "someone looked." Grant did not cancel the wedding that night. That would have been too simple. He still loved my sister. I heard it when he called me the next morning, each word careful, as if it had to walk past the wound. "I'm not asking you to tell me what to do," he said. "Good," I answered, "because I won't. I just need to know if the dates Vivian found are real." "They are." In the background, a truck beeped. He was at a job site, learning that the woman he planned to marry had built part of their life on edited truth. "We sat with the mortgage broker in February," he said. "She told me she had debt and not much saved. She let me talk about carrying more of the down payment." In March, we toured houses in Westchester. She said Beacon was too far north, like she had no reason to be attached to it. In April, she cried because the venue wanted a bigger deposit. Brielle had not lied once. She had maintained a weather system. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "Start with what I can prove." By noon, he had paused the joint account application. By 2, he had canceled the mortgage follow-up. By 4, He had told the venue no more payments were authorized. He did not yell. He did not post anything. He just stopped signing. That was when Brielle panicked. She showed up at his townhouse in Carroll Gardens after dark, still wearing her engagement ring, mascara neat enough to prove she had planned the tears. Grant opened the door but did not step aside. "You froze everything?" she said. I paused it. "You embarrassed me. I protected myself." "From me?" Grant looked at her for a long time. "From a version of you I apparently never met." She tried softness first. Grandma Ruth had worried about her. She was scared Grant would judge her for family money. Nora made everything sound criminal because Nora hated being left out. Grant let her finish. Then he asked, "Why did Nora's share go through a title company?" Brielle's mouth opened, but nothing useful came out. There it was again, the silence beneath the crying. "You're choosing her over me," she said. "No," Grant answered. "I'm choosing not to marry a story I'm not allowed to read." I did not witness that scene. Grant told me later, in a voice so flat it hurt to hear. He said Brielle stood there as if he had slapped her. Then sadness hardened into insult. "You think you're so honorable," she said. "Wait until my family hears how you treated me." Grant took the spare key from his ring and placed it on the small table by the door. "Then tell them the whole thing." She did not pick up the key. He closed the door gently, which somehow made it worse. Brielle had spent her life becoming the saddest person in the room. Grant had just become the first man who refused to pay rent inside her version of the truth. Mom chose Saturday night because she believed weekends softened people. "Just dinner," she told me on the phone. "No lawyers, no accusations. We need to speak like a family." I almost asked when we had last managed that. Instead, I said, "I'll come." There was a pause. Mom had expected resistance. My yes made her careful. When I arrived, the porch light was on, and the front window glowed warm enough to look forgiving from the street. Inside, the house smelled like pot roast, garlic, and the cinnamon candle Mom lit when she wanted company to believe nothing was wrong. I hung my coat in the hall and heard Brielle before I saw her. Not crying, laughing softly. That was worse. She stood near the sideboard in a pale blue dress, engagement ring bright on her hand, looking tired in a way that invited witnesses. Mom hovered beside her, touching her shoulder like Brielle had returned from surgery. Grant was already at the table. He sat one chair away from Brielle, hands folded, face calm. Not cold, calm. The difference mattered. Aunt Paula sat near the end, purse on her lap instead of the chair beside her. She met my eyes once, and I knew Ruth's letter was inside it. Mom clapped her hands. "Let's sit before everything gets cold." Everything was already cold. The roast had gone gray at the edges. The carrots were limp. The wine sat unopened, because even Mom understood a cork popping would sound obscene. I took the chair I always got, the one near the kitchen doorway, the service chair, the leaving chair, the chair that said I was included as long as I remained easy to move around. Then I changed my mind. I walked around the table and sat across from Brielle. Mom froze with the serving spoon in her hand. Brielle looked at me as if I had stepped onto her wedding dress. No one said anything for 3 full seconds. Mom recovered first. "Nora, honey, I really want tonight to be about healing. Healing requires knowing where the wound is." Brielle let out a small, broken laugh. "There it is." Grant did not look at her. Mom sat down carefully. "We can talk through this without turning it into some legal spectacle."
I lived without a legal spectacle for 36 years, I said.
Somehow, my name still ended up on papers I never signed.
Mom's face tightened. That is exactly the kind of language that makes this harder. No, Aunt Paula said quietly. Every head turned. Paula looked at Mom, then at Brielle. What made it harder was pretending Nora asking questions was worse than why she had to ask them. Brielle's eyes shone instantly. She had tears ready in the wings. "You all really believe her?" she whispered. I folded my hands on the table. Not under it, not in my lap. On the table.
I wanted everyone to see I was not hiding. Brielle dabbed under one eye with a napkin she had not used for dinner. "I knew this would happen," she said, looking at Grant, Mom, then Aunt Paula. "I get engaged, I'm finally happy, and Nora finds a way to turn it into an investigation."
"She has always done this," Brielle said. "She acts calm, but it's judgment. She makes you feel stupid for needing people, for wanting family, for wanting something beautiful."
Grant's jaw moved once. He still said nothing. I had heard versions of that speech since childhood. When Brielle broke something, I was rigid for noticing. When she spent money Mom did not have, I was cruel for asking where it went. When she cried, my dry eyes became evidence against me. Brielle turned to Mom. "You know how she is." That was the old button. Press it, and Mom usually opened like a drawer. This time, Mom only looked at me. Her fear was not for truth. It was for what truth might cost in front of witnesses. "Nora," she said carefully, "maybe we can all lower our voices." My voice is already low. Brielle laughed through a sob. "See? That tone. Like we're all beneath her." I reached into my tote bag. The room changed before I removed a single page. Brielle's crying stopped halfway through his next breath. Grant leaned back, not away from me, but away from what he knew was coming. Aunt Paula's hand tightened around her purse strap. I placed the first packet in the middle of the table. "This is the informal accounting for Grandma Ruth's Supplemental Granddaughter Fund." Mom stared at the cover page. I tapped the beneficiary line. Nora Mason and Brielle Mason, equal shares. Nobody reached for it, so I placed a second packet beside it. This is the receipt, release, and refunding agreement. It says I reviewed the accounting, accepted the distribution, and released Russell Keene from responsibility. Brielle's lips parted. "At the bottom," I said, "is a signature that looks like mine." And Mom whispered, "Nora." But I did not sign it." The pot roast sat between us, untouched and gray, like something from another life. I placed the third packet down. "This is the Dutchess County deed for the parcel near Beacon. Brielle bought it 12 months ago. Hudson Ridge Title Services handled the escrow." Grant looked at Brielle then. Not angrily. Worse. Clearly. I added one thinner page. "This is the payment direction letter, instructing my share to go to that title company." Brielle reached toward the papers, then pulled back. "You don't know what you're implying," she said. "I know exactly what I'm documenting." Mom's face had gone pale. I looked around the table. I had been warned away from my life. "I'm not asking anyone here to believe me," I said. "The documents will do that." For once, Brielle had the spotlight, and it showed everything. Brielle stared at the papers, then gave a wounded laugh. "Oh my God," she said. "Nora, do you hear yourself? You're acting like I broke into a vault." "No," I said. "A vault took more effort." Mom flinched. Grant looked at the table. "Maybe you signed it and forgot," Brielle said. "You sign things all day." "Maybe Grandma's estate was just another file you shoved into a drawer." There it was. The cleanest lie asks you to distrust yourself. I opened the folder Vivian had prepared. "March 7th, I said. That's the date on the receipt and release. The date I supposedly sat before Calvin Price and acknowledged my signature. Mom whispered, "Nora, please." I did not look at her. On March 7th, I was in Chicago. I laid down my flight itinerary, the hotel receipt near the loop, the auto schedule on Wacker Drive, and the badge log showing my entry at 8:12 a.m. and exit at 6:43 p.m. Central Time. Unless Calvin Price notarized me through a conference room wall in Illinois, I said. I wasn't there. Grant leaned forward and read the badge log. Brielle recovered fast. Then Russell's office made a mistake. Maybe they attached the wrong page. I slid the payment direction letter closer. This letter doesn't just release Russell.
It tells him to send my distribution to Hudson Ridge Title Services. That could have been clerical. Clerical errors don't usually buy land.
For half a second, the fragile bride disappeared, and I saw the woman underneath, furious that her polished story was being read with page numbers. Grant finally spoke. "Brielle, did you provide the title company instructions?" She turned to him like he had betrayed a sacred vow. "You're really doing this in front of everyone?" "I'm asking because I'm still trying not to hate the answer." The room went quiet.
I touched the notary page.
Vivian contacted Calvin Price. He remembers a woman bringing documents to a coffee shop near Queens Boulevard. He did not record a full driver's license number. He did not copy the ID. He cannot clearly describe me. Brielle looked at Mom, not at me, at Mom. That told me more than a confession. Mom covered her mouth. Maybe she did not know everything, but she knew she had handed Brielle Russell's letter and called it helping.
Brielle stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. "You want to destroy my life?" she said. "No," I answered. "I want my life back. You're jealous because I'm getting married." I looked at a ring, then at Grant's empty hands on the table. "I'm not ruining your wedding, Brielle. I'm interrupting your cover story."
Grant's face changed, not with surprise, with release. He turned to Brielle, voice low. "I need the truth before I need a wife." Brielle's eyes filled again, but this time nobody reached for her first. Not even Mom. Aunt Paula stood with one hand on her purse. Brielle turned on her, eyes wet and furious.
"Please don't tell me you're part of this too."
Paula took out an old envelope. Mom recognized the handwriting before Paula unfolded it. "Oh, Paula," Mom whispered. "Ruth sent this 2 weeks before she died," Paula said. "I thought there would be time." The room went still as Truth stopped asking permission. Paula read, her voice shaking once before it steadied. "Paula, if anything happens before I can explain everything properly, remember this. The supplemental granddaughter fund is for both girls." Mom closed her eyes. Brielle's tears stopped. Brielle must learn she can stand without applause. Nora must know she has a place that does not require permission. For years, Brielle had wrapped herself in Grandma Ruth's memory. Ruth wanted her protected. Maybe some of that was true, but protection was not permission to steal. Paula lowered the page. "She saw both of you. That was the whole point." Brielle's mouth tightened. "That letter doesn't prove anything legal." "No," I said. "It proves something you needed everyone to forget." Mom pressed a hand to her chest. This time, no one rushed to comfort her. "I didn't know about the forged signature," she said. "Nora, I swear to God, I didn't know that part." I believed her. That was not the mercy she hoped it would be. "You knew Russell asked for my information," I said. "You knew Grandma had mentioned something for both of us. You knew Brielle was handling papers with my name on them." Mom's mouth shook. I was grieving. So was I. Those 3 words hit the table harder than shouting. Grief had always been treated like something Brielle owned and I managed. Mom looked down. I should have asked more questions. Yes, I said. You should have. Brielle snapped. Mom didn't do anything to you. I looked at my sister. No, you did. Then I looked at my mother. But she made it easy. Mom folded in on herself, smaller in her chair. You didn't have to forge my signature to erase me, Mom. You only had to look away.
Brielle shoved back her chair. I'm not sitting here for this. But no one followed her. For the first time in my life, Brielle walked out of a room, and the room did not go with her. I placed Grandma Ruth's letter back in Paula's hands. For once, I did not need to carry the proof alone. At the door, Mom said my name. Not honey, not sweetheart.
Just my name. Nora. I turned. She looked older under the hallway light. What do you want from me? I could have said apology, loyalty, truth. All of them felt late. Instead, I said, start by not asking me to protect the person who hurt me. Then I walked out with the copies and the timeline, no longer apologizing for my own name. By Monday morning, Vivian Park had turned my family secret into a court filing. She petitioned to reopen the accounting for Grandma Ruth's supplemental granddaughter fund and demanded an explanation for how Brielle had been paid while I had supposedly released $99,200 without being contacted at my real address. Russell King's tone changed within 24 hours. His assistant stopped calling it archived estate material. By Wednesday, his malpractice carrier had been notified, and Vivian had requested the packet, scanned metadata, email headers, wire records, and notes tied to my name. Brielle had always been good in rooms where people wanted to believe her. A court file was different. It did not care that she looked pale. It did not care about wedding deposits, a shaking voice, or mom saying baby girl like a closing argument. Hudson Ridge Title Services confirmed what Vivian suspected. A wire tied to my distribution had entered escrow for the Beacon parcel. The land was in Brielle's name only. Vivian moved to restrict sale or refinancing until the dispute was resolved. For the first time, Brielle cannot turn stolen money into scenery. Grant called Thursday. I canceled the venue, he said. I stood by my kitchen window, watching rain strike glass. I'm sorry. Don't be. I should have slowed down months ago. She keeps calling, he said. Your mom called too. What did Mom say? That Brielle made mistakes because she was scared. I almost smiled. In my family, fear was a luxury item. Brielle wore it, and everyone else paid retail. What did you tell her? I told her fear doesn't forge a signature by itself. The next morning, Brielle posted nothing. No ring photo, no prayer quote, no soft-lit selfie about healing, just silence. Cousin Melissa deleted her comment under the engagement post. Uncle Ray stopped leaving voicemails. Aunt Paula sent Ruth's letter sealed in a plastic sleeve. Then Vivian called. Calvin Price gave a statement. He admits he did not verify you. A woman brought the documents, said the signer was ill and waiting in the car. He stamped the acknowledgement anyway. I closed my eyes. Brielle? He says the woman matched her general description. We also have the coffee shop receipt, scan timestamp, and Russell's intake email. Pieces. That was how truth returned. Not all at once. One ugly piece at a time. By the end of the week, Grant had returned Brielle's ring through his attorney. Russell had stepped away from the Whitcomb estate. Vivian opened settlement talks for repayment, interest, legal fees, and a lien against the Beacon land if Brielle refused. Mom left me one voicemail. Nora, I don't know how we got here. I listened to it twice, then I deleted it. We got there one choice at a time. 3 weeks after Vivian filed the petition, Mom asked to meet near Brooklyn Heights. She arrived early. Maggie Mason was always late when she felt powerful and early when she had no room to perform. I should have asked more questions, she said. No tears, no baby girl, no plea for me to understand Brielle before naming my own hurt. Yes, I said, you should have. Her eyes filled, but she did not reach for my hand. I respected that more than any speech. I don't know how to fix this. You don't fix it by asking me to make it smaller. She nodded. The nod cost her something. 2 days later, Vivian called with the settlement terms. Brielle would repay my share, about $99,200, plus interest and part of my legal fees. If she could not secure the money, the Beacon parcel would be sold. Russell Keene's insurer would cover part of the damage. There was no dramatic arrest that week. Civil recovery and criminal exposure move at different speeds. If Brielle failed to cooperate, the forged documents and the notary statement could travel somewhere colder than a family dinner. Grant sent one message through Vivian. He had returned the ring through counsel and wished me peace. He was not the hero of my story, but he had opened a box my family wanted sealed. A month later, I drove north to Dutchess County. The sky over the Hudson Valley was pale and hard. Bare trees lined the road like old witnesses. I parked beside the Beacon parcel and stepped into wet grass, into the earth Brielle had tried to buy with my absence. It was smaller than I expected. That almost made it worse. My name had been traded for a modest strip of land, distant hills, and a broken fence leaning into weeds. I took Grandma Ruth's letter from my coat pocket. Nora must know she has a place that does not require permission. For years, I thought belonging meant someone finally making room for me at the table. I was wrong. Sometimes belonging starts when you stop begging for a chair and buy your own door. By spring, after the settlement cleared, I put a down payment on a small cottage outside Beacon. White siding, a narrow porch, one stubborn maple tree in the yard. Nothing grand, nothing Brielle would have envied. But the deed carried my name, only mine. I did not become cruel. I simply stopped shrinking to fit the chair they left for me. Some families do not betray you with one loud act, but with 100 quiet choices to look away. The lesson is simple. Truth may arrive late, but when it does, let it stand at the center of the room. If this story moved you, please leave a like for the channel. Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us where you are listening from. Thank you for staying until the end. I wish you good health, a peaceful heart, and I'll see you again in the next story on Revenge Glow.